Hi there, and welcome to another live stream, live at 5, with myself, Coach Stephen, BSc Bachelor of Science with Honours, and Richard. I don't know where he is at the moment, so if anyone sees him, please report him and come back to reception with him. But anyway, you would think that after doing a 24-hour live stream, I wouldn't want to do this on a Sunday, but actually, maybe Richard is asleep. There you go. It was very difficult for those that saw it to get back into a normal routine. I think if I'd have tried to do it when I was high carb, I would have worried completely and utterly about whether I could do 12 hours. But it was relatively straightforward. I only sort of began to sort of flag in the last, hour 22. And I stand when I do all of my stuff. I'm standing now, and I always try to stand up. So I stood for 22 hours, and I think I had a couple of bites of a sausage, which I've used for demonstration purposes about the thing that I put on what I eat in a day and gets me in trouble because it's processed. But it is, I think, 95% beef. But anyway, or pork, actually. Right. So anyway, welcome to this. I am going to steam ahead without Richard for a bit, see what happens. I put that it's going to be an hour. I don't know if it will be an hour. Maybe people are sick of us after that 24-hour thing. Personally, I thought it worked pretty well, but I'm happy to see comments from anyone if they've got any improvements they could have made to the show that we did, the 24-hour thing. Just so you know, also I've been segmenting it down to sort of hour or 2-hour sections. So if you find the 24 hours playback, which is split into a 10-hour, 7-hour, 7-hour, so there's 3 bits on YouTube, which also have chapters for each guest. I've also done some 1-hour edits, which has chapters for the topics we're talking about. So you can either just sit and watch 10 hours of the conversation, then 7, and then 7, or you can watch an hour. And if you really are rushed, then if you can look down the chapters in the description, and if there's something on there that takes your fancy and you don't want to watch a whole hour, then you can just look at a section of it. Also, there's podcasts. So I've done audio podcasts of all of those things. So I don't know if Richard's going to turn up, but let's fingers crossed that popping sound might actually be Richard. So let's see if we can add him to the stream. Oh, there he is. That's nice. But his camera is on, I think, but he seems to be frozen for some reason. So anyway, maybe let's remove him from the stream and see what happens, because that might be a technical hitch. Anyway, right. So that's how I've divided it all up. Richard, can you hear me, Richard?
I can
Yes.
indeed. Can you hear me?
I can, yes. Obviously, you're late. So I'll need a note from your parents as to why you were late.
I know. Apologies. I've just been rushing back from IKEA.
Ah, IKEA, yes. Well, you're excused then, because that's like sort of the crystal maze, isn't it? And you're frozen again. I think when you've been to IKEA, hang on a minute. I've got myself a decaf coffee, which is going to get me into trouble. So yeah. So yes, I'm going to go into a question. If you can hear me, Richard.
Okie dokie.
Yeah, good. Right. Okay. We'll do a little bit of chat maybe later once we're settled in. So Matthew's asking, do you supplement with vitamin D in the winter, or believe you can still get enough from food? What do you think?
Plenty from food. The thing with vitamin D is that it's essential, but it's not the magic elixir that we've been led to believe either. Is the result of vitamin D consumption and absorption, which is the reason that we live longer. We do need vitamin D, but it's we get plenty from food. In fact, I think we absorb most of it from our food. The vitamin D that we get from the sun acts as a sunscreen. Believe it or not, so it's absorbed into the skin and it acts as a sunscreen, but more.
Yeah, Richard, I think your internet's just gone down a little bit. So
most of the yeah, it's all good this end.
You're back now. We didn't have this problem for 24 whole hours, did we? Yet,
So
now we have.
I've got full internet this end, which is strange. Yeah, it's all good this end.
Yeah,
but
we didn't get any of your answer really. It just froze at this end. So vitamin D.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yep, perfect.
So yeah, no, we don't need to supplement with vitamin D. We get plenty from the food that we eat. So the vitamin D that we get from the sun acts as a sunscreen within the skin. Now, vitamin D is essential, but we get plenty from the foods that we eat. But when we look at the benefits of vitamin D, most of these benefits are nothing more than a surrogate marker to the increase in nitric oxide. So the UVA rays hit the body, and the body increases nitric oxide off the back of these UVA rays. A lot of the benefits that we see from the vitamin D or sun exposure, absorption through vitamin D, is because of the increase in nitric oxide, not through vitamin D per se. So yeah, it's a tangled web, is vitamin D. It is super important, but we get more than enough from the foods that we eat when we live a carnivore lifestyle. So no, I do not supplement with any form of vitamin D.
Have you ever believed that we needed to? Because I did.
Yeah, of course I have.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I used to supplement with vitamin C. I used to supplement, which isn't actually vitamin C. I used to eat my spinach and kale smoothies. I used to add turmeric and black pepper to those. I used to actively seek out my antioxidants. I'd always supplement with a multivitamin. Yeah, I've been there. I've supplemented with almost everything that you can imagine. But as years and years of working with people such as yourself, working with people such as Anthony Chaffee, and networking within these circles, you soon pick up and learn little bits, and that's what we are putting forward, isn't it? We're paying it forward, these little trinkets that we have have learned over the years. There's still a lot of people within the keto and carnivore community who push antioxidants and fiber and veg as good sources of nutrients, and some of these are people that I highly respect, but they're wrong. Yeah, so it's difficult sometimes, when you move in a circle and you completely disagree with what someone is saying, even though you respect them. They seem to be getting 70 to 80%, if not 90% of it correct. But yeah, it's so. I used to supplement with vitamin D. I do not supplement with vitamin D at all anymore. The only thing that I do supplement with occasionally is creatine. Although that has been causing me problems recently in regards to running, because it fills the muscle with volume and it makes everything hard and tight. It seems to do something to a muscle in my lower back, which causes pain when running. At least I think that's what I've whittled it down to. And leucine, the amino acid leucine, incredibly underrated leucine, but we get lots from the food we eat. When you eat red meat or animal proteins in general, we absorb tons and tons of leucine, but there would be an argument there to maybe supplement with leucine for muscle building and repair. There's another the item that leucine breaks down to is something called HMB. I did look into HMB for a long time, but the research is highly conflicting. It looks like a lot of the benefits from leucine is obtained from leucine and not through the metabolite of HMB. So I've gone back to leucine, but yeah, those are the only things that I can think of, other than sort of electrolytes, obviously, and MCT, but I don't look at those as supplementation. I look at those as part of, they're classed as foods. Electrolytes are foods. MCT is a type of food. They're VAT-free, so that they're classed as foods. I don't regard those as supplements. Exogenous ketones I use. I use those most days for cognitive function, anti-inflammatory purposes, athletic performance, anti-aging. But again, BHB is something we create naturally in the body. I guess you could argue that we are supplementing with them because it doesn't come from our food. But it again, I look at these as foods.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I mean,
those are the
just going back to what you said about the nitric oxide and vitamin D, and don't worry, I'm not complaining because you went off on a tangent. And I see quite a few people talk about nitric oxide, but they don't really make the connection because they talk about the morning sun and the fact it comes in at a different angle and therefore you get more nitric oxide. But they don't get into, well, that's actually the thing that's giving you some benefits of the morning sun. It's not necessarily the vitamin D, it's actually the nitric oxide. But I used to absolutely believe in it. And as a phlebotomist, I was worried about my vitamin D being low. And I would say supplementation worked for me, as in it put my readings up. Whether it made any clinical difference was marginal, and I don't supplement with vitamin D now. You could argue that in the winter and the summer in England, there's not that much difference. I think being outside, you see, this is the other thing. People say get your vitamin D by going outside, which I get that because it's sunlight hits your skin and it gets converted and all that and interacts with cholesterol. But I think maybe the same as what I just said about the nitric oxide. Maybe it's the getting outside. This is the thing. If you're outside, I don't think that's going to be necessarily bad for your health, is it? I mean, it's one of the good things. So,
one of the points that Anthony Chaffee made during, I don't know, it might have been during the carnivore-a-thon. If not, it was a different podcast. He references the Inuits who do not suffer with low vitamin D levels, yet they are not exposed to sun very often. So there's it's something we need to look into a little bit deeper, I think. But the proof is in the keto pudding, as they say, isn't it? Or
absolutely.
Pudding.
And that's it. There's always these outliners, and yeah, exactly that. If you're in a place where there's no sunlight, but you don't suffer from low vitamin D. There was something yesterday that I thought was particularly interesting. Some guy was talking about fat makes you fat. And the studies he referenced, he put like 3 or 4 points, and he said fat makes you fat. And in brackets, he put not in the context of a low carb diet, though. Bang. So I just picked him up and said, well, then it isn't the fat, is it? Because if you still have fat and it doesn't work, doesn't make you fat on a low carb diet, then it's not the fat, it's some other factor. Carsten, who was a big supporter of the Live 24, thanks. We were entertaining. We tried. After editing, I've edited and then edited again. So I edited it down and then a little bit more. So I've been listening to it all again. I don't feel that I'm entertaining. I talk too much like I'm doing now. But yeah, thank you. I felt we did okay to keep people entertained.
Yeah, fantastic comment. Appreciate that, Carsten. I think we were paying the price for several days following the 24-hour live. I went straight into work following that. I worked all day and then so still fasted. So I think in total I fasted for just under 3 days. I take the advantage. Not that I had any issue with eating on screen, which was the plan. I did think it would have been a good idea to have shown people what we eat. But it's difficult when people are talking and asking questions and a mouthful of steak and whatever else. So I took the opportunity to fast, but I didn't sleep. So I did that on very little sleep the night prior. I had 3 hours sleep coming into the 24 hours. Then we were awake for the 24 hours. Then I went into work. And that evening at 6 o'clock, I went for a 5-mile run. And it wasn't until I got back from that and that I indulged in some food. So we were awake for the full 24 hours off the back of 3 hours sleep and a 5-mile run. So it just, and I could not have done that if I was fueled by carbs for sure. But I think we tried, didn't we? I know there was, I think next year we could plug things a little bit better. I think we've learned a lot, haven't we? And I think that yeah, we maybe one or two of the speakers we could have timed differently. But yeah, and I know once or twice, one or two of the speakers went off on a tangent on things that had nothing to do with carnivore. But look, it was a learning curve, and I think I think everybody enjoyed. That's the feedback that we're getting back, isn't it? And I thoroughly enjoyed.
Yeah, it's interesting actually, because we didn't stay up for 24 hours. We stayed up for much, much longer. I mean, because obviously I didn't instantly get from my bed straight to the studio here. So I had an hour beforehand. And then I just carried on working. And I literally have, I'm not after sympathy, by the way. It's just to say, and I wanted to get the content out, and I wanted to get it out in manageable sort of hours, and do podcasts, audio podcasts, all different versions for people while it's fresh and everyone's interested in it. So I don't think I went to sleep during the day. So I possibly stayed up for 36 hours, 37 hours, something like that. And same scenario. I had a little plate of different sort of things that I could eat, and I was going to say, look, here's something not carnivore but a keto brick. When Robert Sykes came on, because he invented the keto brick, it was his ingredients and all that. And firstly I didn't feel hungry, which I think is very interesting for people that think you have to eat and you have those cues. We were talking about food so often. Not once did I think, oh, this is making me hungry. I just got on. So maybe there's a lot to the fact that people eat just out of habit or boredom. Entertainment. This really divides people. So I enjoy my food and I do eat for entertainment, but I also understand why some people don't do that, because they go off the rails. I think. Right, here's one for you. I'm going to just shut the door while you answer this. Hello, gents. DJ Knight, this is from. How do I get shredded on a carnivore diet? Was on strict carnivore for 6 months, but couldn't lose the last bit of fat. Should I focus on lean protein? Richard?
Yeah, in simple terms, spot on. So we need to flick the switch from dietary fat into body fat. So when I was competing professionally, even now, I probably sit around 9-10% body fat, which is fairly lean. I've still got abs and veins and all sorts. And I do that intuitively. But to get down to 2% or below even 9 or the 10% that I am now, I would need to swap out some of the fatty cuts. So I would typically remove butter, the tallow, lard, ghee, whatever it is you're cooking in, gravitate towards leaner cuts. If you're consuming cheese, cut away from the cheese. If you're consuming any dairy or double cream, come away from that. If you're consuming eggs, take out some of the egg yolks. Now, that said, fat is still incredibly important for the production of hormones. So what I would do is I would do a few lean days where I would eat nothing but lean protein. I'd go down to maintenance protein. Now, this is an extreme cut. So, and this isn't healthy. Getting down to 2% isn't healthy. But if you have a sticking point that you're looking to break through, move to the lean cuts, go to maintenance protein, which is around 0.5 grams of protein per pound of body weight. Your body will literally eat itself, but you will not lose muscle. You won't lose muscle, but the production of ketones is anti-catabolic, so you will not lose muscle. I'd cycle that for a few days and then have a higher fat day, almost in the same way that you would with carbs, as in a carb refeed. So I'd have a higher fat day. I'd go back to eating lots of fat for the production of hormones. But essentially, yeah, I mean, that's, there's no magic ingredient or magic formula to this. Cutting out dietary fat or lowering dietary fat is how we get the body to ramp up endogenous fat production, and that's what I used to do to cut for these competitions, is reduce the amount of dietary fat that I was consuming. But I
think what you always say, and I'm just going to remind you, is when you're doing the shows, the bodybuilding shows, that's not for health, that's aesthetics.
Exactly.
Very low level of fat. And maybe I missed it when I zipped out to do the core and get some bits for the next question. So It depends how shredded you want to get. But if you want to go to low body percentage, then you do have to reduce the fat, which doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be healthy. You're going to look great, but I would always say you don't want to look like you're in a competition for the whole of your life, because that wouldn't be particularly healthy. Talking of aesthetics, and I will start this. Thank you, Matthew. Happy Sunday, Stephen and Richard. Your hairstyles look really cool. I would love to know what you use, hair gel or wax. And so, yeah, in this spray bottle is the magic ingredients for me. I'll give you the ingredients. It's homemade, by the way. Water, salt. That's it. So, yeah, it's just salty water. Now, I wish I'd known this when I was high carb, because when I used to use gel and waxes and stuff, and I ran or I trained, my eyes would sting because I would have this gloopy sort of sticky thing in my hair. And when I looked into it, all you need, and my hair is really doesn't go where I want it to go. I found out that you can just use water and salt, but it's like it's very analogous to the nutrition science and Big Pharma. You don't need all these chemicals. You don't need all this sticky stuff. You don't need waxes. You don't need things like that. Just a little bit of salt in water. Like I say, just spray it, bang, and it holds it like this. So it's great. It's great. What about you, Richard?
I'm gonna have to try that, because my answer is pretty poor compared to that, to be honest. But I use hairspray, so it's not as natural as salt and water. But yeah, I moved away from wax and the gel. But it, I'm really funny about what I put onto my body in regards to what's absorbed through the skin. So I guess that is one aspect to look at. I mean, you could argue that the amount that I put on is minimal and it's in contact with the hair, but I guess to a degree some of that is being in contact with the scalp, isn't it? So yeah, that's a fantastic point, actually. But thanks for the compliment. I feel like I've just been dragged through a bush backwards, but but I'll take it.
You're new to the salty water mix, then, are you?
Yeah.
That's good.
You'll have to fill me in with the ratios of salt to water, and I'll give that a try. Yeah, fantastic.
That's about a quarter teaspoon of water, and that the rest is water. Sorry. Quarter teaspoon of salt, and the rest is water. And if it doesn't hold it enough, you put a little bit more salt in. And there's no problems afterwards. Just doesn't make your hair sort of sticky or grainy or anything like that. You don't have bits of salt in your hair. It's perfect, really.
Yeah, really and it makes sense. It makes sense because after a hard workout on the bike or a run, you have to sweat in a lot. My hair, if I do that, without putting anything on, which is the way that I train, I like my head to breathe when I'm working out. It is sort of almost stuck in position, isn't it? Depending on what you've been doing. So it does make perfect sense. I like that.
Yeah, I try to make perfect sense. You see, we do the science, but sometimes a little bit of just very basic sense is really good. Right, so Carsten again. We have got other questions. So it's not, you will be answered. I'm just doing them in the order that they're coming up. How do you tap into the superior energy? How is it biologically different to glucose and slower stroke harder to kick in when needed, even in keto state?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if you're beginning a journey initially, energy tends to drop off a cliff. And that's because we're not adapted. When we're born in a ketogenic state, and we are adapted, but through years of abuse of glucose, we become sugar burners. So the body loses its ability to process ketones and function efficiently. So we can get into a ketogenic state incredibly quickly, but these ketones are wasted. We waste ketones as acetoacetate and acetone. It can take, I usually push the figure of 12 weeks. I know that Stephen would argue that even longer than that, which there may be weight to. When I look at my journey, I was still seeing benefit 12 months on, but I think it takes at least 12 weeks to adapt to upregulate certain enzymes and pathways, particularly the monocarboxylate transporters. So your body could be flooded with a sea of of beta hydroxybutyrate, but the body will waste most of it. So it takes time for the body to upregulate these pathways and enzymes and utilize BHB. So if you were to test your blood ketones or urine for ketones, initially you may show incredibly high, but this means your body's wasting them. If you were to test my blood ketones now, my blood ketones are incredibly low, probably sitting around maybe 0.4 to 0.6 if I'm lucky. And this is because my body is utilizing them and not wasting them and endlessly flourishing through the body and not being used. But ketones will produce twice the energy that glucose will, and it will last considerably longer, and it's 400% more efficient. And by efficiency, I mean in regards to cellular respiration, when the body creates energy, we convert something called NAD plus into NADH. NAD plus levels decline with age. It's part of the electron transport chain. It's how we produce energy. And this decline in NAD plus leads to oxidative damage, oxidative stress. And this is why we almost age over time, because levels of NAD plus become lower and lower and lower, almost in the same way. If you can use the analogy, taking a photocopy of a photocopy of a photocopy, this is what happens to your cells. They become less active and faint year after year or time after time, because the body costs, or it costs the body 4 NAD plus molecules to process 1 glucose molecule. Whereas when we're ketogenic or carnivore, it costs the body 1 NAD plus molecule, increasing the NAD plus to NADH ratio, making energy efficiency 400% more efficient when ketogenic or carnivore than that compared to glucose. So I don't have a problem with superior energy, lots of it. We know that we can use ketones for energy on long distance. We know that that's well established in the endurance market or the endurance field. But let's look at sprinting or powerlifting. I'm incredibly strong for my size. So I weigh 72, 73 kilogram currently, yet I can still bench press 165K, deadlift 230K and squat 190K. That's incredibly high for my weight, my body weight. And I put this down to being ketogenic, not consuming foods that are negating the body's ability to absorb nutrients in other foods and the body's ability to create and utilize a superior energy. That's what ketones are. They are superior energy. Superior energy for the brain, the body, and the heart. It increases mechanical efficiency of the heart by as much as 35%, blood flow by as much as 75%. The cells will uptake and utilize ketones a lot more efficiently. The brain, the muscle. So and when it comes down to glycogen, we know that for power we need glycogen. Now, it was deemed in the 1950s that glucose stored in the muscle as glycogen. That's why we needed to consume glucose in order to get muscle glycogen for energy within the muscle. And it seemed so obvious that scientists never examined another means for producing glycogen. But we produce glycogen when we become adapted, living a ketogenic carnivore lifestyle. The body upregulates these systems and enzymes and will create glycogen through lactate. So when I train on weights now, I don't get that pump that a carb athlete will get. Now, the carb athlete will chase that pump, that burn, but that burn shows an inefficiency. It's we're basically inefficiently buffering hydrogen ions, but I don't get that burn, and I'm sure Stephen can back this up whenever he's doing any workouts. That what happens is the lactate, so it's not lactic acid, because lactic acid does not exist in the human body. It's lactate. The lactate is an energy system. A keto or carnivore adapted athlete has the ability to send this lactate to the liver, where it's recycled into glycogen and shipped back to the muscle at a higher rate than even a carb athlete who is consuming copious amounts of carbohydrates in order to fill that glycogen. So almost on every level, in fact, studies show on peak power output, on endurance, on time trials, the carnivore or ketogenic adapted athlete will outperform themselves as a carb athlete every single time. So that's not to say if you are ketogenic carnivore, that you will be better than a person who is on carbs, because we're all different, but you will be, once adapted, a lot quicker, stronger, faster, and you will last a lot longer than yourself as a carb athlete. So yeah, ketones do supply superior energy. Now, I a bit of a taboo subject within our community, but I do supplement with exogenous ketones. I manufacture exogenous ketones. I don't mention this during the talks that we do very often, obviously, Steve, because I'm not here to push product, but I find that I benefit immensely of supplementing with exogenous ketones and with C8 MCT oil or powder. The MCT oil and powder instantly converts into BHB. Now, this elevates ketone levels within my body, as does the ketones do. I find that with higher ketone levels, I work a lot better on an endurance event or a competition such as running or cycling. So I will use those for that. And that's what I was using for the entire carnivorathon. I was taking in exogenous ketones periodically throughout the 24 hours. My body creates them. It creates them naturally. And it is a taboo subject, and many would argue against it. But to put this into perspective, every team in the Tour de France supplements with exogenous ketones, whether they are keto or not, for athletic performance and for recovery. So take them from that what you will. But if they are doing it at that level, then there must be some weight, in the theory behind it. But I notice a fantastic benefit.
Yeah, I think that's a very full and fantastic answer. And in the middle of that, I did flash up your website and the fact that there's 10% off supplement. But I will make a big point of that. I mean, we did 24 hours and we didn't push supplements and products. That's not really what we're about. But they're there. I mean, people want to take supplements, and Richard takes the knowledge that he's got and he makes sure that any supplements are absolutely the best they can be. So I'm not shy in promoting it because it's great.
I just want to just to add really quickly to that, people think that I push these to make money. I've made these supplements for me to use, and all I'm doing is offering them to the market. I won't put any rubbish in that I disagree with. So the supplements that I've manufactured for me to use personally. I use everything branded with Keto Pro. I've created it for myself, and I'm offering that to the market basically because I believe that they are the best on the market. But there we are. That's enough of that. I'm not here to sell products, but they're there. They're available if should you wish to look into them. But
yeah, and I'll put your website at the top there, and there's a 10% off for first orders with the code.
Gentlemen.
Keto New 10. So there you go. Right, now I just wanted to add, because we look at things the wrong way when we talk about being fat adapted. Richard snuck in there that we're born ketogenic. So actually what your body does is it struggles to be carb adapted. So when you go to this way of eating, you're just going back to your natural state. You're not fat adapted. You are just basically a human. So you take a baby and you start feeding it carbohydrates, a formula, all things which are completely alien. And this is why to me, this is the crux of it. We feed human beings of things that they've never eaten before, and way too many carbohydrates, way too many sugars, stuff that you ancestrally would not have been eating, and certainly not I'm actually segueing into the next question. And seasonal stuff as well. We have it 24/7, and that's bad. And we become carb adapted. This way of eating is not fat adapted. It's just being normal. So with that being said, here's the question from Sabrina. Thoughts on carrots and bananas? Are these benign among the fruits and veggies?
So again, I mean, we know that all plants contain phytoalexins, plant toxins. Are you asking, are they okay to eat occasionally? Or, I think there's a spectrum in regards to what is better and what are worse. I think these are probably towards the better end of the scale. Do I eat them? I haven't eaten a carrot for a very, very long time. I can't remember the last time I consumed any fruit other than berries. Berries, I think it's probably been. In fact, the last time I consumed berries came in some cheese that I bought. Not knowing that it contained berries, but I'm not against berries. I just don't consume any fruit or veg at all anymore. But then I'll consume coffee now and again. This isn't coffee, by the way. This is exogenous ketones. But I'm not afraid to say. I know that Anthony Chaffee is dead against coffee consumption. He tells a story of a friend of his who was carnivore, aches and pains went away, put some coffee in, and he was struggling again. And the same with him. Coffee I use as a tool. So we all have these little cruxes, but there's certainly worse things occasionally. Yeah, there's certainly worse things to be consuming. I know we're told to avoid root vegetables. They are higher in carb, but they I would class them as being lower on the toxicity scale. So if you put them in now and again, who am I to tell you not to consume them? There's certainly worse things. You could have put 100 different things up that could have been a lot worse than bananas and carrots. I think. I don't know what your thoughts are, Stephen, but I think that as minus the carb content, they're right at the bottom end of the toxicity scale, I believe, unless there's something in there that somebody listening knows anything about that I'm unaware of. That I would put those at the bottom end.
Yeah. Well, I don't eat carrots or bananas. I certainly don't eat bananas. I'm going to show you a picture. I don't know if it will show up, but there you go. There's a picture of me when I won a singles tournament at tennis. When I was high carb, and even then, we were told by the sports scientists to not eat much of the banana. So if you watch a 5-setter, at Wimbledon, and the tennis players are eating bananas, they do not scoff a whole banana down. They will take very small bites because they're very sugary, basically. There's a lot of glucose. And you don't want to have an inappropriate high spike of glucose and then the pancreas doing an inappropriate and a biphasic response of insulin. So you want to make sure that your blood sugars don't spike. There you go. And many zoos are asking people not to feed fruit to their animals because they become diabetic. Now, real world, like Rich said, if you went out and there was a banana and you really fancied it and you ate it, we're not going to come and take your carnivore card away. All right.
No.
So that's totally fine. Both of those things are particularly sweet. Carrots are sweet. I used to grow carrots when I believed in high carb and fruits and veg. And wow, the amount of animals that had to die to make sure my carrots lived was incredible. The pesticides and everything I had to do. So yeah, I'm not a killjoy. If you like them and you have them occasionally, I don't think they're going to be problematic. I would say that if you have problems with sugar addiction, anything that's sweet, the sweet taste in your tongue, the cephalic response from your brain expecting sweetness could be problematic. Paul Saladino has a lot of fruit and honey, but it was 50 grams, wasn't it, 2 years ago, and now it's 400 grams. So again, not knocking him. Just saying, it's a slippery slope. So yes, if you're good at moderating and you can have a banana and it's not going to lead you into having tons of fruit and sweet stuff, I think it's fine. But, that's my 2 pennies.
Just to add to that as well, Paul Saladino also surfs for like 3 to 4 hours a day, doesn't he? So, I mean, yes. He doesn't work the type of jobs that the rest of us do. But coming back to the carrots, I've just looked up some information. They are high in lectins. So just be mindful that they do contain lectins, but you can obviously remove part of the lectins by boiling and then placing into ice water after. But yeah, just be mindful. Obviously, lectins are probably one of the most damaging molecules or carbohydrate binding proteins that are in the vegetables. This is one of the, I actively try to remove lectins from my diet because they do cause intestinal permeability. But again, as Stephen says, I'm not the carnivore police. We had a bit of a rant about the carnivore and keto police on the 24-hour live. I think understanding and having the knowledge allows you to make an educated decision. We know that living a carnivore lifestyle with nothing else is going to be considerably healthier for you. but am I against people putting bits in? I think if your gut is healed, you're not going to rip holes in your gut by having the occasional carrot now and again. Because it's going to take time for that damage to occur. And it's this constant, and the gut heals incredibly quickly. So if you're going to put a few carrots in now and again, who am I to judge?
Yeah. I just want to do a little bit of housekeeping as well, because Sabrina repeated that question later on. I promise everybody in the comments, if there's a question, we'll get to it. The thing is, two things happen. One is Richard and I trying to give full answers. All right. So it's not like other people that answer the question very quickly or divert you to a video. We try to answer it there and then. So don't panic. We've got your questions in front of us. And so try not to worry. We're not going to avoid it. Even if it's a question we don't like. Well, for instance, do we want to talk about fruit and veg? Possibly not. But we're not going to avoid it. We will definitely talk about it. So don't worry about that. And there are nice comments.
Really quickly, just to circle back to that. I mean, if you noted, I mean, we had a large amount of carnivore guests on who are regarded as, some of the world leading carnivore people. Bar two of those, I believe that I can remember. There may be more, and apologies if there are more, but when we asked the question, do they deviate or do they consume other things? Bar two, every other one of those consumed things that we would deem to be outside of the carnivore circle. So, I mean, there has to be a little bit.
It's the two that didn't then.
So we didn't ask these. I mean, I've never asked Dr. Chaffee or Sean Baker whether they dabble outside of, I know Dr. Chaffee's incredibly strict. I don't know if they do have a little treat now and again, or, is that the right term? Or if they dabble outside of being strict. But I'm unsure. I mean, we didn't ask them, but we did ask a lot of other guests, and they said, yeah, I have some berries, or I have the occasional apple, or there was, Dr. Kilt's with the ice cream. So, these are some of the healthiest people on the planet. So again, we're not the keto police, and it's a case of if you are living.
But the thing is, Rich, and sorry to interrupt, but I mean, it is your situation as well. So for instance, many people can do those things, but some people can't because they've got that.
Exactly. Yeah,
so
I agree.
To use a stupid example, if you said to a smoker, yeah, go and have one because, it's Saturday and it's the cup final, that's not a good thing, or if you're an alcoholic, yeah, go and have a whiskey because, it's your partner's 50th birthday or whatever. So it is always with that sort of proviso that you can moderate. So that, and it is a personal choice, of course, obviously. So we're not zero tolerance, certainly not. But you do have to go into it with your eyes open that, it can open the floodgates. And for instance, using smoking, and this is one of the things that I used to do in my previous role before I was doing this sort of coaching, was smoking cessation. And I had people that would say, I've not smoked for 30 years, and then my daughter did not come home at the time I was expecting. And first thing I did was light up a cigarette. So you could think 30 years, you would think that would not be the response. So if it's lurking in the background, and if you feel you're a carb addict, possibly the worst thing you can do is a little bit of sweetness. That's it. So we'll move on to the next.
Agree.
Yeah, is that all right? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, Rich, but
yeah, no, that's all right. Go on, fire away. I had a story to tell in regards to carb addiction from a personal standpoint, but let's get through some of the questions and maybe we can circle back.
That's what I was thinking, because I've just said we do get to the questions. Carsten has asked another one. The South African cyclist, who is Sean Sakanowski, said on your 24 hours, energy needs movement to kick in, like an afterburner.
Yeah, so I'm unsure in regard. The only thing that I can think he was alluding to there is that, for example, being ketogenic and carnivore gives you superior energy, but it's energy on demand. So what I explain to people is that, if you drink a cup of coffee, your body and brain is stimulated, and you get this, this fake borrowed energy, if you like. But being carnivore and keto, it's not like that, is it? You just go about your daily business and you just feel normal. You feel the way that you should feel. But if somebody tried chasing you down the street with a knife, you would find, no matter how tired you were, this amount of energy would come from somewhere, and you would be gone like a bullet. Or you'd stay and fight them, whatever it is you choose to do. But I look at BHB as energy on demand. It's energy that's sitting there, that is called upon when you need it. And yeah, I don't know if that's what he was alluding to on there, but I speak to Sean quite often. I've got all the time in the world for Sean. I think we caught him at the wrong time because we asked him to come up an hour early. So I think we'd walking him up. He was still taking his coffee or pre-workout, whatever it was that he was drinking. So he was a little bit worse for wear. And then he does like to go into the weeds and off on a tangent sometimes. And we went off the boil with carnivore. But he's one of the nicest guys that you've ever met. But I think I'm going to have to get him back on a podcast with me. And maybe he'd love to do one with Stephen. So there's an option there that we can delve into that a little bit more and get more out of him. But yeah, energy on demand. That's the way that I'd look at ketones or being ketogenic.
Yeah, I think I wholeheartedly agree. Stephen Williams, great guy, radical strength trainer, really good coach, by the way, if anyone's interested in powerlifting. Thoughts on building large amounts of muscle on a carnivore diet? I think the diet has a lot of utility, but I've seen no evidence it would be used to build lots of muscle. Now, I'll have to say, I've seen evidence firsthand when I went to Sheffield and stood next to Sean Baker. That guy is not lacking in muscle. Depends if you're talking about bodybuilding. Now, Richard is a Keto Pro because professional bodybuilding, so he's chomping at the bit, but I'm gonna get a word in. Firstly, I would say I have done a bodybuilding tournament in my 20s when I had tons of testosterone floating around and absolutely everything in my favor, except I was eating high carb and low fat and chicken breasts and rice, the bro diet and all that sort of stuff. But Stephen, I think I built 9 pounds of muscle in a year at age 57, going into 58 on carnivore, which was the most muscle I've ever put on in a year. Now, if you're talking about the bag of walnuts, sort of Arnold Schwarzenegger, I know you know what I'm saying here about performance enhancing drugs. You want to get into sort of freaky size, I think, then carnivore is not going to get you there. But definitely Sean Baker is definitely a good example. And now I'm going to step aside to someone who is definitely love this subject, Richard.
I do, because so people think the carbohydrates, and while I'm talking, I'm looking for something on my screen. If I can find an image, I'll share it with you. We think that carbohydrates build muscle. Carbohydrates do not build muscle. So all of the research that when we look into muscle protein synthesis, adequate protein builds muscle. So as long as we're consuming enough protein, extra carbohydrates that will elicit an insulin response. And it's believed that this insulin response will increase muscle protein synthesis. But it doesn't at all. Zero. Nothing. Nada. It does not increase muscle protein synthesis. What does increase muscle protein synthesis is the co-ingestion of protein with fat. Protein and fat builds muscle quicker than protein and carbohydrate. Now, I've found an image on the screen. Do you mind if I share?
Yeah, of course. And I'll also add, of course, when you have fat, you release bile, and bile is essential for amino acid absorption. So that's always a bit of the puzzle I like to put in there. But yeah, share the screen, please do. I haven't seen it on my screen yet. And Stephen's put an auxiliary question there. So I'll read that out for people that are on the podcast. He's put, of course, many muscular people maintain muscle they have already built. I'm curious whether you know of anybody who's built large amounts of muscle with it. So with that being said, if you're on the audio, obviously you're not going to see this image. Richard's going to put on the stream there. But like I say, I think my 9 pound of muscle is pretty good, actually. That's quite a large amount of muscle, which I definitely didn't have before, by the way. So yeah, fire away. Sorry, Richard.
So this was me following competition. Now, I'm not absolutely massive, but what I did weigh was pure muscle. So basically, at that point, I had 2.3 kilograms of fat in my whole body, and the rest is muscle. Now, when I lost the weight, I lost 107 pounds. I went incredibly lean and skinny, but I didn't have any muscle. This was about 4 to 5 years later, and similar story. So at the top end of muscle building, we can gain around 0.8 pounds per month of lean mass unless we're supplementing. So these guys you see on stage who are mass monsters have been heavily supplementing with hormone growth hormone and anabolic steroids. Now, this is natural. This is nothing other than supplementing with creatine and leucine and the other things that I mentioned earlier. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to find another one as well. A gentleman that you are familiar with, Steve, but I don't think you've met, and would be a fantastic person to interview as well. So the next pick I'm looking for is a friend of mine, Alan Reeves. We've done...
Yes, Alan. Yeah,
we've done
a few podcasts. Speaks to me, but he keeps having to rearrange.
So is that on the screen now? Have I just shared that one?
You've got to share it. You've got to add it to the stream, and I can't see it.
Okay. Sorry, I've just...
And sorry for the people with the audio podcast.
Yeah.
By the way, we had while you're looking for that, we had a message from Sabrina, which she said she didn't know that carrots contained lectins. They're out of here. So yeah, thank you, Sabrina, for that. That was good. So yeah, so let's get. I mean, that's pretty a big amount of muscle.
Yeah, and there's another one that I mean, I'm small. I'm a small person. I'm small framed, but I look big on stage because it's almost an illusion when you when you cut for a comp. So I looked bigger because I was so lean. But I'm going to share this one. Yeah, I'm just trying to share another one.
All right, okay. We can't see you, Rich.
I don't know where the cameras are, but there we are.
There we go.
So this is Alan. Alan's a big guy. He's well over 6 foot, and in fact, he has been training with and that's the difference between age 40 and 50. And don't get me wrong, at 40, he wasn't in bad shape, but he's grown considerably in 10 years while being ketogenic. He's been training with one of the mass monsters. What's his name? The guy that's come away from the bodybuilding. He's into yoga and stretching and all this sort of stuff now. I can't remember. One of the biggest in the UK. But yeah, mine's gone blank. Anyway, next to him.
Yates, is it Dorian Yates?
Dorian Yates, spot on, yeah. So he's been training with Dorian Yates. And he dwarfed Dorian. I know Dorian's not bodybuilding anymore, but in a picture that he posted, Alan Reeves is considerably bigger than Dorian Yates, and and they both pumped, they both train in the gym. Alan's got slab of muscle on muscle on muscle. He's a big guy, and so yeah, you can build muscle. Fat and protein builds muscle quicker than fat and than protein and carbs. The reason that we believe, so I'll stop sharing this. The reason that we get the impression carbohydrates builds muscle is because when we consume carbohydrates, the glycogen fills the muscle. And for every 1 gram of glycogen stored, the body will store 3 to 4 grams of water. So it'll do this. And that's a tool that I use for competing. So I would lean right down. I would do a fat refeed for a few days. So lean cuts of protein and fatty cuts of protein for 3 days. Lots of fat, and I would fill the intercell of my lipids, so that's fat stored in the muscle. And then you okay, Steve?
Yeah, your signal you cut out a little bit there. I just wanted to say
all good now.
Yep, you're good. But
so yeah, brilliant. So I'd fat feed, and then 3 days before comp, I would do a glyco feed. So this is the only time of the year that I would put carbs in. I would put it in through white rice, because white rice is lectin free. I would consume lean protein, and I would do this not for health, but purely for aesthetic purposes. So I would gain about 7 pounds by eating high fat and so I'd store 7 pounds by eating fat and storing fat in the muscle in the intracellular my lipids. And then I would gain an additional 10 the following 2 to 3 days on water and glyco. So I put 17 pounds on in 4 to 5 days. And on a small frame, this used to make me absolutely huge. On incredibly tight skin. Again, I'm not saying that this is healthy. but it was fit for purpose. But that's the reason that we believe that carbs builds muscle, is because of the glyco and water. And this is another thing that the anabolic steroids will stimulate, is the retention of water. And when we look at anabolic steroids in the term of like Dianabol makes people incredibly big, incredibly quickly, and incredibly strong. But it doesn't build muscle. It just adds fluid to the muscle, which acts as a lever and allows us to lift things a lot heavier. The second that person stops supplementing with that drug, and that drug leaves their system, and so does the water, then so does their strength. They haven't actually built any muscle. So they're not building muscle. So these mass monsters you see on stage has not been built by carbohydrate. Well, it has, because they've been consuming carbohydrate, but that has been counterintuitive to them building. They would be considerably bigger, I believe, if they were doing it through protein and fat. But muscle contains another protein called myostatin. Now, myostatin will prevent your body from growing past a certain size. Your body is predispositioned to be a certain size, and your body would deem it to be unhealthy to go beyond this size. And a lot of these guys that you see who are absolutely huge have low myostatin within their body. So when they've tested their myostatin, the protein in their body that prevents them from building muscle is incredibly low, whereas mine is incredibly high. And a normal person's is high, because we need to be athletic and lean so we can chase, and so we need that happy medium of being strong and fast and lean and light so we can hunt and track our prey. It's counterintuitive to weigh 17 stone of muscle, because we're not going to be able to chase that prey that quickly. So our body is intuitively designed to prevent us from being too big, and that's why these people get so big, because they have low myostatin, or they take something called a myostatin inhibitor, which I don't know if they work, but they do exist on the market. This is something that would
there's some cattle where they have a genetic defect which stops their myostatin, and they basically look like superhero cows.
That's it. They're
very big and muscly. So
from doing nothing. Yeah.
From doing nothing, and it's shown in nature. So sorry to rush you, Richard, because I'm just aware that we've got a few other questions. That was a very full answer, so I won't add anything to that. Well, actually, I will very quickly. When I did my bodybuilding show, and I looked the best I'd ever looked, and I was training for that week after at Gold's Gym, I came home, and somebody I worked with asked me if I'd go around to his house to train and bench press. And he couldn't believe how weak I actually was. So I looked good. I looked really strong. He was bench pressing a considerably heavier amount than I was. He was absolutely shocked. I wasn't, because I knew what my strength was. I knew what I looked like. So what Richard's saying is aesthetics doesn't mean that you're doing well. So I've got a couple of other questions. Nice simple one from Craig. Is it normal to get tired during the day on carnivore? It's week 1, day 7. So I would say yes, when you're adapting, you can be tired. A very basic reason is because the breakdown of protein takes 5 times the amount of energy than breaking down carbohydrates that you're used to, or fats as well. So there is just a physiological extra load on the digestive system, which doesn't mean it's bad to eat protein. It's just a thing that you need to adapt to. What would you like to say to Craig, Rich?
Yeah, a couple of things. Make sure you're getting plenty of salt and or supplementing with electrolytes, because when you become carnivore or keto, you're coming from usually a level of insulin resistance. This insulin drops almost overnight. This signals the kidneys to release sodium from the body, which leads to major fatigue, headaches, migraines, nauseousness. Salt is essential for life. We need lots of salt. So quality salt like a pink Himalayan or Celtic sea salt, and as I say, and or supplementing with electrolytes, but way more than you think you need. Listen to your body. You need lots of salt. As Stephen said, the production of energy is costing the body a lot more. So it takes time to adapt, and it takes time to upregulate something called the monocarboxylate transporters, which is how the body uses energy sort of within the muscle, and the mitochondria throughout the body. It takes time to upregulate these pathways. So this is the reason a lot of people will throw the towel in early on, because it takes time to teach the body how it's meant to be living. we're coming from this state of insulin resistance and being fueled with these sugars, which are giving this instant energy, and now we're telling the body to go back to its its innate intelligence and start using fats for fuel, which it hasn't done since you were a baby, probably. It takes time to adapt, so stick with it. But salt is one of the quickest fixes. Lots of salt, and I think that you'll feel considerably better just by putting that salt in.
Yeah, and I did put your code up if you want to look at electrolytes. So I'm going to do that again. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So yeah, at the top of the screen, keto pro.com, and you get 10% off. Right. So yes, that's great. So Carl has asked, how long before an event would you recommend to take BHB for it to be a benefit?
Hey, Carl. I know Carl. Carl's a very good customer of mine. I believe he was in store on Saturday, actually, while I was moving. That's another story.
Well, let's talk out, just for people that haven't heard, what is BHB, and then answer the question.
Brilliant. So BHB is beta hydroxybutyrate. So this is what we create when we are ketogenic. We create, there's 3 ketone bodies: beta hydroxybutyrate, which is the creme de la creme. This is what we're in search for. And then there's acetoacetate and acetone. Acetoacetate and acetone are quite often wasted within the body. Acetoacetate will fluctuate between BHB and acetoacetate, but we're getting deep into the weeds there. But BHB is the superior ketone. This is the one that we're in pursuit of, and it takes time for the body to upregulate and utilize this ketone body. But BHB that Carl's referring to is the BHB that I've got in my cup. This is exogenous ketones. So endogenous is when we create ketones from in the body from being ketogenic or carnivore. The BHB that Carl's referencing is exogenous ketones, the type that we put in orally. Now, many will slate exogenous ketones, saying that it's just expensive urine because we pee most of it out. But BHB is a signaling molecule. So what happens when you take it exogenously is it trains and teaches the body to upregulate those monocarboxylate transporters, and you adapt a lot quicker. It also helps you overcome things like keto flu, the last comment mentioned, because they are bound to salts. So the BHB, the beta hydroxybutyrate molecule, is bound to electrolytes, it's bound to salts. But it tells the body, it signals and trains and teaches the body to adapt quicker. So this 6 months or 12-month adaptation period can be fast-tracked by supplementing. But there is a way to do this, and it isn't more is better either. Less is best. But it teaches the body to create ketones. So basically, we're supplementing with an exogenous form. But what Carl is asking there for an event, so before running or cycling, how often would you take it before an event? I put so we do a few different types of ketones. We do a chocolate flavor, a vanilla flavor, all natural. Although obviously they do come from plants. Then unflavored, which I mix with electrolytes, and then there's a raspberry bomb. I take like the raspberry bomb version because it comes with caffeine about an hour leading up to an event. So exogenous ketones can work and function within the body for up to 8 hours. A high intensity, it could be anywhere between 2 to 4. So if you were running a marathon, for example, you could supplement with exogenous ketones, and that should last the entire marathon, even if you are consuming carbohydrate, because BHB orally or exogenously will take oxidative priority. It'll buffer your glycose stores, and it will preference BHB for that entire event. So even if you are a carb athlete, you can benefit, and you would see a better benefit actually than I do, because I already produce ketones. You would see a better benefit as a carb athlete than a keto athlete. But what happens is we artificially, well, not artificially, because it is a natural substance. We increase the ketones within the body, and the body will work at a higher rate. So in athletic performance terms, we can perform at a much higher level when we supplement with exogenous ketones. But about an hour before I start to drip feed it in, Carl.
That's great. The Fat Addict, that's Adam, I believe.
Adam.
By the way, it's Adam's fault that I know Rich.
It is, yeah.
I interviewed Adam, and he just casually in the conversation said, because I spoke to this nutrition expert, Richard Smith, and I think he just thought I knew you, Rich. But anyway, that's how I got to know
Nobody knows me. Nobody knows me.
Oh, they do now, maybe they do. Right. So the Fat Addict said, I'd love to hear you both speak about the opinion of some people that you can't be carnivore unless you're very strict and never deviate from meat only. And I will have a pop of that first, just very quickly. That is true for some people. I mean, some people just can't moderate; they have to abstain. I mean, that's one of the things that comes up in a lot of my success story interviews. It's not the fact that they just don't think they can do it. So yeah, there are some people that just can't deviate from meat only, and autoimmune conditions would be another one. Carb addiction could be another one. So I think that's what you're asking. That there are some people that do have to be strict. I think that's what you're asking, and
I think I may be wrong, Steve, but I think what Adam's getting to this is I think he's alluding to the carnivore police again. That's the way I've read that. It basically some people saying that you can't be carnivore unless you're strict.
I see what you mean. So yeah, so if
I may be wrong. I don't know if you want to chuck that into the comments, Adam, but that was my understanding that some people think that.
We did cover this in the live, but yeah, very briefly. I mean, I'm not bothered, but I would say someone like Paul Saladino isn't really carnivore. I just think there's too much outside of it. But if he wants to call himself carnivore, and people are happy with that, fine too. Live and let live. Personally, I think someone eating that amount of fruit and fruit and honey is not really carnivore. But and I think when you look at, he says he's animal based and he does what I eat in a day. Meat is not front and center, and organs get a big push. And I think that's mainly down to trying to push the supplements a little bit. But yeah, so I don't know. I sit on the fence with it. It doesn't make me cross. It doesn't make me angry. Live and let live. But I do think it is important to some people, because I have also coached people that have gone down the route of fruit and honey, and it's absolutely derailed them. So it is a serious topic in that way, where they've said, I am carnivore. And I ask, so what are you eating? And they tell me, and I say, right, okay, that might be why you're derailed, because you were doing really well. Then you include your fruit and honey. And again, this isn't the anti-Paul Saladino thing. It's just being realistic. But it's such a difficult thing to talk about, because it's very broad, and whatever I say will annoy somebody and upset other people. So that's my 2 pence on that.
Yeah, I think I'm not a lover of the carnivore police. I mean, there's people who will throw stones from a distance. Everybody deviates. We're all human. And if you don't deviate because you've been strict for so long, then kudos to you. But you didn't just wake up and become carnivore and have been strict. A lot of people gravitate into this slowly over time. Along the way, you have made mistakes, and people made mistakes. But this is about understanding and education, and being able to make an educated decision. Now, what makes a carnivore to me is somebody that predominantly only eats meat. So if 70% of your plate is meat, then you are carnivore based, in my opinion. If you eat a little bit of veg, typically a plate is the other way around, where it's 70% veg and even less than 20% protein. But if you are eating, if most of your meals are predominantly meat, animal based, then that's what makes a carnivore to me. And then there's different subsections, isn't there? We get people who put, I think you can be carnivore if you do consume a little bit of honey, but again, it's how much. I think you can be carnivore if you consume a little bit of veg occasionally. It's all about the rule and not the exception. If you eat meat for 6 days out of 7, then to me you're a carnivore. If you decide to put some broccoli in on day 7 with your steak and eggs, you said that doesn't not make you a carnivore. Do you know what I mean? But there is context to this, because the deeper and the stricter you go, I believe, the more benefit you'll see. But again, it's understanding the foods that contain these phytoalexins, these plant toxins, these lectins, these compounds that are going to cause issues. If you were a person who can eat 6 days of carnivore and then put let's just use the term carrots, because that's what Sabrina popped up earlier. Obviously, she said she's not going to put them in anymore, and that's fine. But if you wanted to put them on day 7, that doesn't not make you a carnivore just because you've had 1 or 2 carrots with your steak and eggs. Do you know what I mean? And do we ship? We can do. we do by request. So if someone in the States wants to drop us a message, we have to work out specific carriage because we don't have tariffs specific to the States at the moment. But if you message, we can ship to the States. Yes.
Yeah, there was something I wanted to mention on the 24 because I discovered these crisps, by the way, and I don't know if you know about these, Rich. Protomars-snacks.co.uk. I was dealing with Carnivore Crisps, the American company, and somebody said, "Is there anywhere in Britain that does those sort of things?" So yes, there are. One is the Kitchen Detox. She does her own crisps, but these are really nice, and these are just chicken. So the ingredients literally are 100% chicken. So
Fantastic.
I don't know if it's something you might want to stock or whether they just sell direct.
Yeah. We're always looking for third party. We also stock curators, which are 100% pork puffs, like quavers. There's no seed oils or lectins. And what's the other one? Robert Dorset's pork crackling. We also stock, which again, grain free, lectin free, and seed oil free. And they're absolutely delicious as well. So there are options. I mean, somebody would see me eating a pack of those and think, not that I do very often, that it's pure pork. There's nothing in there but pork. It's air dried pork, Yeah. So there's
yeah. Well, that's why I have them, because if you want to have a bag of crisps, which occasionally I do, it's just chicken, and they've kindly said you can get 20% off with the code UK Carnivore. So
perfect.
I don't make any money out of that. We didn't even get the crisps for free. I just wanted to find somewhere in the UK that did that sort of thing. So now we're catching up, which is really good. Let me just get rid of that on there, and we'll go back to our names at the top. Right. Comments. We've got one more question, and I'm going to read the question, and then I'm going to read another comment, and then we'll get into the question. Right. So because the comment actually sort of answers the question. So have you ever heard of cartilage healing on carnivore? I have a torn meniscus, and my doctor says that surgery will only make it worse due to where the tear is located. And that's very true, because you could have what's called a bucket handle tear. Very difficult for the meniscus to repair from that, because it looks like a bucket handle. Basically, you have a rip, and then you have a bit hanging on, and sometimes that flaps over, and that's really difficult. Yes, I have heard of things improving with the carnivore diet, or even just low carb and keto with those sort of things. And I've had people that are due to have knee operations not having the knee operation. I think I've even done a success story about it. But as always, there is someone who will put a comment in that answers you. Susie said, "Not a doctor here, but my meniscus tear has not healed with 1.5 years of carnivore. However, I have less pain and can now sprint and do barbell squats. So the knee is more functional."
Yeah, fantastic. And again, everyone's an individual, aren't they? So what works for one doesn't work for another. But I wholeheartedly believe that carnivore, is the pinnacle of health and well-being. And that is going to be your best chance of healing and repairing your body. And if you can't do it with that, then I don't think you're going to. There's no other way to do it. If carnivore doesn't help, and obviously Susie there saw a massive improvement, which is fantastic. And as you say, during the carnivorathon, I think Robert didn't he suffer with a meniscus tear that repaired. Am I just making this up? I'm sure that it was 24 hours, so we were incredibly tired. I'm sure somebody mentioned about recovering from a tear. Might be worth going back and double checking. But yeah, I've seen some incredible things with carnivore healing and repairing all sorts of the body. And we spoke about teeth, didn't we? Certain cavities and stuff in our teeth. So it yeah.
Well, we had Dr. Kevin Stock on, who is a dentist. So I think, I did try and actually, that was genuine. If anyone thought that was a silly thing when I said I went through the human body and tried to get a specialist in every area, I actually did do that. Right. So we're going to finish. We were going to finish with that question, but Broderick Hall has just put a comment in there. I'll put that on, but we are going to finish it. I don't know if you want to add something. He's saying he's carnivore, but he has to eat veg because I have to eat chlorophyll. So once a week I eat veg to offset orphan, which is a blood anticoagulant. A lot of people call it a blood thinner, but actually what that does is it stops you coagulating. But anyway, yes, right. So we're going to finish. Did you want to add something, Rich? You're looking very studious.
No, sorry.
Right. Yeah. So that wasn't sort of a question, really. That's just saying that's what I do, and that's what I was trying to say. Everyone's individual, so they eat veg or fruit for whatever reason. Anyway, I think we're going to wrap up now, if that's okay with you, Richard Smith.
Fantastic. No problem at all.
Yeah. So thanks everybody for tuning in. I hope you've enjoyed the live, and you can always put, when this goes on YouTube before it starts, you can press notify. You can also comment. You can put your questions in before we even start, so we can load up and have questions ready to go. So that's great. So there is someone else just put some questions in here. That's a question for you and Dr. Chafee. How can she heal? I think we'll have to do that next week because we're going to wrap up now. So, but sorry, Jacqueline, and I will see everybody. Well, we will see everybody next week.
Definitely. Yeah. Thank you all. Pleasure as always.
Bye-bye.